Can Trump and Putin end the Ukraine war? Inside the 2025 summit, welcome to Roh'sCorner, where we unpack the world's biggest stories with clarity and grit. I'm Roh, and today, we're diving into a seismic event, the Trump-Putin Summit, set for August 15, 2025, in Anchorage, Alaska. Can Donald Trump, back in the White House, broker peace in the Russia-Ukraine war? Will Vladimir Putin's historical grievances and security demands derail the talks? And what does this mean for Ukraine, BRICS, and global stability? Buckle up, this is a high-stakes diplomatic showdown. Let's get into it. 1. A historic handshake in Alaska, the Trump-Putin Summit unveiled. Picture this, two of the world's most polarizing leaders, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, shaking hands on a military base in Anchorage, Alaska, tomorrow, August 15, 2025. Why Alaska? It's symbolic. Once Russian territory, sold to the US in 1867, it's a nod to history and a neutral ground near the Bering Strait. This summit, the first since Trump's 2024 re-election, is all about one thing: ending the Russia-Ukraine war, a conflict that's killed thousands, displaced millions, and spiked global energy and food prices. Trump's promised a quick deal, but Putin's demands, Crimea, annexed regions, no NATO for Ukraine, are steep. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky insists on full sovereignty. With the world watching, from Europe to BRICS nations, this summit could reshape geopolitics. So, what's driving this conflict? Let's start with Putin's view of history. 2. Why Ukraine? Unpacking Putin's historical obsession. To understand why Putin's so fixated on Ukraine, we need to dig into history, or at least, his version of it. He sees Ukraine as Russia's lost sibling, tied together by Kyivan Rus, a medieval state from over 1,000 years ago. For Putin, Ukraine's 1991 independence after the Soviet Union's collapse was a tragedy, splitting what he calls a single people. He's pointed to Russian-speaking communities in eastern Ukraine and Crimea as proof of this bond, claiming they need Moscow's protection. Then there's the Soviet breakup, a wound Putin calls a geopolitical catastrophe. He argues the West, especially NATO, exploited Russia's weakness by expanding eastward, encircling it with military bases. In Putin's mind, Ukraine's drift toward the West isn't just betrayal, it's a threat to Russia's soul. Now, I'm not saying he's right, but this narrative shapes his demands at the summit. And it's not just history, recent events lit the fuse. Let's talk about those next. 3. NATO's shadow, the immediate sparks of war. If history is Putin's justification, immediate events are his trigger. He points to 2014, when Ukraine's Maidan protests ousted pro-Russia President Viktor Yanukovych. Putin calls it a Western-backed coup, and he responded by annexing Crimea and fueling separatists in Donbass. Fast forward to 2022, and Ukraine's growing ties with NATO, think weapons, training, and talk of membership, set off alarm bells in Moscow. Putin says NATO on Russia's border is a red line, threatening his country's security. Add in Ukraine's military buildup, backed by US and European arms, and you've got what Putin calls a justification for his special military operation. Ukraine, of course, sees this as pure aggression, a violation of its right to choose its alliances. Both sides are dug in, and Trump's walking into this mess promising a deal. But with BRICS, Iran, and even Gaza in the mix, the summit stakes go way beyond Ukraine. Let's zoom out. 4. The world watches. What's at stake in Anchorage? This summit isn't just about Ukraine, it's a global chessboard. BRICS nations like China and India are pushing for a multipolar world, slamming US tariffs and sanctions. India's Prime Minister Modi, who's mediated peace talks, could play a role. Then there's the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace deal, brokered by the US in 2025, which Russia sees as a challenge to its influence in the South Caucasus. Iran's upset about the Zangezur corridor, and BRICS has condemned US-Israel strikes on Iran since June. And Gaza, BRICS demands a ceasefire there, tying Middle East tensions to the broader anti-Western narrative. Trump's also should be pushing for a Gaza truce, which could come up as a diplomatic bargaining chip. Europe's nervous, too, warning against a deal that sidelines Ukraine like some modern-day Yalta. It's a tangled web, and Trump's deal-making will need to navigate it. So, what's the bare minimum both sides might agree to? Let's break it down. 5. A fragile truce, crafting a ceasefire both sides can stomach. So, what's the smallest deal Trump and Putin could pull off? First, a phased ceasefire, halting attacks on civilian infrastructure like power grids. This was floated in March 2025 talks in Saudi Arabia, and it's a start both sides could stomach. Next, a frontline freeze. Russia keeps its 20% of Ukraine, including parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Crimea, while Ukraine holds its ground, including any sliver of Russia's regions. No one's conceding territory officially, just pausing the fight. Why does this work? For Putin, it locks in his gains without forcing a full retreat. For Ukraine, it preserves sovereignty and buys time. But here's the catch: the parties broken ceasefires before, and are skeptical of each other. Trust is paper thin. Still, this could stop the bleeding and set up talks. But what about Ukraine's NATO dreams? That's where things get tricky. 6. Neutrality or NATO. Ukraine's future on the line. Putin's big demand is that Ukraine stays out of NATO forever. He sees it as a direct threat, a deal breaker. Ukraine's Zelensky, though, wants NATO as a shield against Russia. A possible compromise? Ukraine agrees to a pause on NATO applications, backed by security guarantees from the US, UK, France, and Poland, not NATO itself. This gives Putin his buffer, while Ukraine gets protection without closing the NATO door permanently. It's a tough sell for Zelensky, who's called for robust and reliable guarantees, and for European allies who back Ukraine's NATO path. Trump, ever the deal-maker, might push this as a middle ground, but it risks alienating Kiev. The summit's success hinges on threading this needle. Now, let's talk economics, because peace isn't just about borders. 7. Grain, gas, and global markets, economic wins in a deal. The war spiked food and energy prices worldwide, so any deal needs economic wins. A key piece, reviving the 2022 Black Sea grain deal, which Russia quit in 2023. This would ensure Ukrainian grain exports, easing global food shortages. Both sides agree to stop Black Sea attacks, a win for stability. Then there's sanctions. Russia wants them lifted. A phased rollback, tied to Russian withdrawals from areas like Kharkiv, could work. It gives Putin economic relief, aligns with BRICS' anti-sanction stance, and helps Ukraine's economy by stabilizing markets. Trump's tariff threats have BRICS riled up, so this could double as a global trade olive branch. But economics alone won't seal the deal. Security's next. 8. Boots on the ground. Can demilitarized zones work? To keep the peace, the plan includes demilitarized buffer zones along the front lines, monitored by neutral parties like the UN or India. This creates a no-man's land to prevent clashes. For Russia, it's a security win, keeping Ukrainian forces at bay. For Ukraine, it protects their territory without concessions. The problem? Both parties' track record of violating ceasefires. Ukraine's demanding ironclad verification, and Putin's allergic to NATO monitors. A neutral third party is the compromise, but enforcement's a headache. If this fails, the ceasefire collapses. Speaking of Ukraine, they're not even at the table yet. Let's talk about that. 9 voices left out, Ukraine's demand to be heard. Here's the elephant in the room: Ukraine's not at the summit. Zelensky's furious, insisting no deal can be made without Kiev. European leaders agree, warning Trump against a deal that echoes the 1945 Yalta Conference, where great powers carved up the world. The resolution includes a follow-up summit with Ukraine, Putin, Trump, and Europe to finalize terms. This satisfies Zelensky's demand to be heard and eases Europe's fears. But if Trump and Putin push too hard, say, on territorial freezes, Ukraine could walk away. The US risks losing credibility with allies. Putin might be fine with this, as it weakens NATO's unity. The balance is delicate, and Trump's deal-making style could make or break it. So, can this actually work? 10. Deal or delay. The rocky road to lasting peace. This minimum resolution, ceasefire, frontline freeze, neutrality pause, grain deal, sanctions relief, and buffer zones, is the bare bones of peace. It's not a treaty, it's a starting point. Russia gets temporary control of its gains, Ukraine keeps its sovereignty and gets security. But the risks are huge. Putin's demands for permanent territorial recognition and no NATO are deal breakers for Ukraine. Zelensky's refusal to cede land could tank the talks. Europe's watching closely, and BRICS is pushing its own agenda. Trump's in a tough spot. His base loves the deal-maker image, but a bad deal could haunt his legacy, and history shows frozen conflicts, like this one, might rarely stay frozen. The world needs this summit to work, but it's a tightrope. What do you think? Can Trump and Putin pull it off? Hit me up your comments to share your take. That's it for Roh's Corner. Join us next time as we track the summit's fallout. Stay curious, folks. I'm Roh, signing off.